Hello, everybody. Welcome to Oregon State University's Permaculture Design Pro class. We are taking a moment to do a base map clinic, our third one. I'm looking forward to working with everybody today. So basically what we're doing is we're answering questions or we're actively going through the base maps for folks. And it looks like Ruben's given us his presentation to start off with. So Ruben, what are we looking at here?
So this is a arid site in the South Okanagan. It's about 70 acres total, owned by the landowners. But I'm looking at about 50 acres, which is 45 acres, which is 30 hectares roughly. Oh, interesting. The direct link. Oh, here it comes. Maybe no. The link did not take you directly. Interesting. And I'm just wondering if I'm going down the right road here because there's, say there's 2,000 trees on site, so I can't do the individual tree approach. And so I'm going with kind of like color gradients, and I'm just a little unsure if that's working.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. So um, basically we've got these two plots that are separated by a road and looks like some other land. And
Yeah.
either it looks like we've got some sparse planting or we've got kind of open field. Um, so yeah, I'd probably, if this were, I'd probably make a delineation between kind of sparse open and then sparse close. So, looking at this, if this were and you're focusing on both sides or just one side?
Just the west side. The
Just the west side.
east side is just kind of rocky. It's quite steep, some very bare rock and no real access to it. So
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, I'd probably, looking at this, I might even call this entire area over here the same, uh, depending on what its composition was. So
composition soil wise, you mean?
in terms of what kind of species we're seeing in here. So if generally the
Yeah,
forest is self-similar in terms of its climax species, because I imagine if we're
yeah.
into Ponderosa, we're into climax, but probably um, definitely not the distribution or the density we would expect in climax, but the speciation for sure. Is
Uh-huh.
this some kind of water body right here?
Yeah, that's Trout Creek. So that's the big water source. And that's the only place that there's really substantial difference in species.
Yeah.
So everywhere else is ponderosa pine and interior Douglas fir.
Yeah.
And then along the creek, you get quaking aspen. Actually, apparently, historically, it was lined with big cedars that were cut down for the railroad.
Okay.
So there's still a couple big cedars at the northwest corner of this property,
Sure. Sure.
which is quite beautiful. But
Yeah. So
mostly
maybe
it's still ponderosa pine along the creek.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of where I was going there. So I would take a look at whatever uh, the riparian species are, and just have those as their own speciation,
Yeah,
um, and be roughly right versus precisely wrong. Like we're just gonna generally get there, and I don't know where the creek ends or starts or anything like that. But
yeah,
yeah, I would make sure that that was the same, and then for the Ponderosa and the Doug fir, I would have it as the same as well. And you can even make a note. You probably have. You're
yeah.
intelligent
If
like
you could
that.
just take a look at this maybe and see what you think about. So I went with tree density in the uphill areas,
Perfect.
but it's pine and fir, and then by the creek, pine and fir plus aspen plus a shrub I haven't identified yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, that looks good. That looks really good. And so the kind of shady coloration is to match these. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's
I'm
not
not,
reading well enough, or is that
yeah, it's not reading really well on my end. Like I'm seeing it
okay?
and I'm kind of feeling like the rest of the image is loading. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? So
Okay, yeah.
I might make it more delineated, only because it'll make it easier in terms of whatever management you decide to go with. The contours are
Yeah.
great though. Where'd you get the contours from?
I had to make them myself. I wrote a saga in the course discussion about how I made them. and it was a brutal day, but the only contours available are 20-meter spacings.
Yeah.
And the contour map generator, like reads the trees in the creek as high,
Yeah.
and then reads a place that I know is a quite flat area as being fairly sloped.
Okay.
So it just wasn't accurate. So I had to, fortunately in this area, there's really good 1 meter government of Canada LiDAR
Oh,
data.
amazing.
Yeah, so but I just had to teach myself QGIS for a day,
Yep.
which
I know
was
that. I know
which was
that.
brutal.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. Okay, well, what I've done here is actually I've put an aerial photo behind it. But, again, since I'm not doing kind of individual trees, I put an aerial photo behind it and use transparencies to try to get some texture that might read tree, but I'll just ditch that then
I think
and
so.
go for just like smooth flat color blocks. That'll give me more differentiation probably.
Yeah, kind of same as what you've done with the cherry orchard here. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
It looks like it's bounded by maybe a pathway or something.
It's a fence around it. Yeah, so the
Yes.
next slide starts showing up
Okay, good.
the
Yeah. Yeah,
lines of
I would
the
just I would make it more delineated and I wouldn't gradiate
okay,
at the ends as you've done. Like it's beautiful, but it's hard to read.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Great work. And what are you designing this in?
This is in Affinity.
In Infinity. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm trained in Illustrator, which I can no longer afford at home, so I've made the switch to Affinity
Oh, nice.
platform.
Nice.
Which yeah, like so many layers. It's the layers, as you've talked about, the layers are such a blessing. So
Yeah. Yeah. Were you using Affinity before this program or did you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just briefly, I've done a little bit of page layout, and I've done a few vector projects with it.
Okay.
But mostly it's like, I know that a thing should theoretically be possible based on my experience. And so I'm able to just Google it and find how to do it in Affinity.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a really great program, and I'm so glad that it's available to folks because I think until you move to a dedicated program specific to landscape design, it's probably closest for people in terms of point and click.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
that looks great. Yeah, that looks really great.
The something that was unfortunate is that this property actually spans two different tiles in the Government of Canada data. So
I
the
had to bring
contour
two in.
lines generated don't match up, which is why I've left them off the top,
Yeah.
which was frustrating. But oh
Yeah,
well.
there's I've taken a couple of trainings in QGIS and there's a way to marry the data, but it's not easy.
Yeah, my Googling did not win on that. So I finally just gave up on it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Hey, if you click back to number 27, just the intro slide,
Yeah,
you might enjoy this. So this came out of Government of Canada. It's
nice.
called Hillshade,
Yeah.
and it's neat because you can actually see there's a flume bed from the 1900s that you can see in the kind of the top middle there.
Ah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
just shocked at the detail you could see on this. You can see this old road, and that is the trace of a flume that goes up like now another kilometer or something before it hits the creek grade,
Incredible.
where they would have pulled the water out. And this guy was running, he had an orchard here in the 1900s.
Yeah. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I imagine if you go back and forth, you can probably see a little, yeah, you can obviously see
Yeah,
the tree growth off the flume as well.
yeah, yeah,
That's brilliant. Very brilliant. Yeah, hillshades are great for just quickly understanding the site if contours are not your thing.
yeah, yeah. It's beautiful.
Nice to see the switchbacks actually over on the southeastern side. I don't even think that's your property anymore. It's probably over here. But
Yeah, well, that was formerly property. My parents sold off some of that. That's the kind of the flattest part of that rocky side.
yeah.
Actually, this hillside, this hillshade blew me away because you can see old creek meanders that
Hmm.
they must be 1,000 years old or something like that. You can still
Hmm.
see in the landscape.
Hmm.
It's
And
gorgeous.
and those little, used to be oxbow lakes, but then have just become either wet depressions or over time as the levels of drop have become dry.
Yeah. Well, this was neat because I have also theorized, like my understanding of the landscape was that the creek cut it over, several millennia. And
Hmm.
then seeing the hillshade, it was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened. All right, as you can see how the creek has moved across this valley.
Well, just looking at it, and we're just kind of playing here, so I'm not saying that I'm right or anything. But when you look at sort of that, oh, it's not big enough. When you look at sort of that arc, you're always going to have a cut bank on this side, and then you're going to have a depositional zone. So,
Uh-huh.
largely this would have been depositional for the majority of history, where it was just continually deposited over and over and over and over.
Right.
And then as you have waters recedes and ice recedes, that flow drops and drops and drops and drops to where we are now, in terms of this warming period. And yeah, I love historical landscapes. It's one of my favorite things to do on Google Earth is just
Mhm.
move throughout the planet and then look at these meanders and these large oxbows, which are just thought of as large lakes. They don't even register as a part of a water system anymore, a flowing water
Right.
system.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the opposite side. What did you call it? The cut side?
Cut bank.
Um, cut bank
Yeah.
is now it's been hardened for 100 years by the railroad. Um, so it's our side gets cut away in the floods,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, isn't
the
that
other side
interesting
is
how
high
that
ground.
that that water that water potential redistributes onto the other side because it's flowing? Because you'll get that thalweg. Thalweg's the deepest part of a moving body of water. So that'll always stay true. But if there's no place for that power of the water to go because of the compaction or the riprap around there, then it will push into the other side.
Uh-huh.
You might actually be really interested. I don't know how much of this is starting to erode, but you might really be interested in David Polster's work. Did you ever encounter David over on the island?
No,
Brilliant man.
pollster like the political investigator,
Sure.
who, someone who does polls.
Polster.
Yeah. Okay.
So David did what he called bioengineering, which can
Uh-huh.
mean lots of things to lots of people. But what David did is after the Department of Transportation had been failing at reforesting and revegetating the cut hillsides of the Trans-Canada Highway, pardon me. Um, because all they were doing is they had cut conifer and there was conifer and wildflower. And so they just replanted conifer after the disruption. But
Uh-huh.
the soil matrix, everything wasn't there. And so he comes in, he goes, well, you're not starting at the beginning of the pioneer species. So he comes
Right.
in and he takes red osier dogwood, alder, and willow. He cuts
Uh-huh.
them in the late summer, early fall before the rains, and then he live stakes them. So he basically
Yeah.
makes a hole of rebar that's about the same size, live stakes them, sometimes create these beautiful um, terraces out of them. And sure enough, they revegetate, and you can see him in photos that he's taken where he points out the conifer that the DOT had put in, and then the
Uh-huh.
conifer that the birds had seeded in because it was just this lush place that the deciduous trees invited them, and the conifer that the birds brought in outgrew the conifer that they planted from the nursery.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen a little bit of willow work because of Taylor Krawchuk here in
Yeah.
Victoria. So I've
So
seen this work, and
David
I
was
didn't know that
Taylor's
actually.
mentor.
Okay.
And he
Yeah.
learned from David and also learned from Jeremiah. Forget his last name all of a sudden. That's a problem when people use weird names on Facebook. You
Uh-huh.
think of them about those avatar handles versus the ones that they are. But
Yeah.
yeah, basically David did brilliant, amazing work. This is the book that you can buy
Okay.
from his wife. Unfortunately, he's fallen to dementia, and so
Uh,
um,
okay.
he's been forcibly retired because of it. But what a great book. It goes through the entire premise and the conversation of it
In multiple landscapes,
in
like in
multiple
kind of
landscapes. Yeah.
okay. Because yeah, the arid conditions there, I'm really uncertain as to how much water we can actually take off the land at all.
Yeah, so I think this would mostly be if you were worried about protecting areas around the stream bank. I
Hmm.
don't know if I would look at live staking because of your precipitable
Yeah.
values any further up, depending on, if the flume was flowing,
No.
um,
Yeah.
or if there was any sort of legal grandfathering of that flume into where you're at now. But
Uh-huh. Yeah.
you know,
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there is grandfathering on the flume at all, but I will check on that a bit. We actually just took a basket making course yesterday online, and so or sorry, day before yesterday on Saturday, and so now I've been thinking about live staking the creek with some basket willows.
100%, 100%. Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of, and there's still some willow structures and sculptures that are waiting to be discovered in a multitude of wetlands across Vancouver Island. It was a big love of mine. I really enjoyed working with it and being a part of that process. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're most welcome, sir. Leon, looks like you've given me your presentation. What are we looking at, sir?
So I wanted to get you to look at the contour and the scale. I'm not sure if I've done it
Sure.
to a good enough standard because I've had to do it from scratch. So I've got no mapping, no contour maps or anything up here.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not surprised that the CCP doesn't have contour data for everybody. Okay, it looks like it's loaded. I'm going to share. Okay, so we've got pioneer species of grass below, gravel track above. And then we've got a pretty pronounced creek that's coming through. Is this perennial or is this just seasonal?
It's seasonal.
Seasonal.
When it it only runs when it rains.
Only runs when it rains. Gotcha.
It's not a creek. It's just a dry. I don't know what you call it. Dry stream.
Yeah, just a drainage. Just a drainage.
Yeah, just a drainage. Yeah.
Looks good. Yeah, looks like we're getting a fair bit of detail and a fair bit of conversation here. I'd probably split up your scale a bit more. So I'd probably take I'm just going to grab this from here. My internet has slowed precipitously this week. I'm not sure why. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to grab actually both of these. Oh, let's go over there. All right. Back to you. We're going to duplicate this. That way we don't mess up what you've already done. I'm going to bring this in. Move this down with the arrows. That's a nice thing about this. If you ever need to do some more granular work, you can always use the arrows. And then I'm going to pop this down. And basically what I'm going to do here, Leon, is I'm going to just make sure that we've got a little bit more gradation here. All right. So again, roughly right. This is precisely wrong. Cool. So that'll give us a bit of detail. So I'd probably bring this up and then jump back in. So it's going to be 30, 15, 5, 3. Okay. It'll be 3, 3, and 6, 9, 12, 15, and then 30. I'm going to steal that 3. And this is meters. Great. So yeah, I would swap this out just so that way we've got a tighter scale. But otherwise it looks really good, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks really good. Easy to read, easy to understand. What kind of soil do you know is here?
I've got some in a bag actually.
Okay.
Look at it quickly. Tell you. I think it's quite orange. Yellow. Nika ike o Nagadima, Nagatudima.
Do you find that it holds water quite well? Do you think it's got a high clay content or?
Yeah, there is clay in it. But her mother suffered a landslide at the back of their house off of a quite steep
Okay.
bank which has been cut into. Yeah, it's quite clay. You can see that.
Oh, it really is. Um, that bodes really well for creating a pond here. Now I know that this is a part of a bigger parcel. This is just sort of the design site as opposed to the full site, right?
Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is a patch of their. This is a piece of their land.
Yeah.
So it seems, yeah. So this is one segment of their land, and then dotted around the area are other segments like this. It's a weird setup. It's not like all of their land in one place.
Yeah. Um, yeah, because if this is a seasonal flow, this channel up here. This is really what we look for when designing water impoundments. Because if we can, the rule of thumb, I picked this up from Jeff Lawton years ago. Actually, I'm going to work on in Zoom.
You would divert that across.
Yeah. So basically, if you're horizontal, so if your dam is 1 or 2 lengths deep, we tend to think that's a really economical return on the dam that we would create. And if that's the type of soil we're looking at, I would go in and do test slices if anybody has machinery, or as in a lot of parts in the world, 4 or 5 guys with a lot of picks. Digging down here or anywhere along like this whole area, I'm going to turn color so that way we can say the same. The way that this is looking with the contours, anywhere here seems like a great spot to put in a pond, and I would probably try to put it in as high as I could. And this is why I was asking about, this way isn't necessarily the end of the property from what you were telling me, right?
That's going to be a road.
Oh, it's a road. Okay. So yes, it very much is
It's
the end of the property.
going to be a freeway.
Oh, right.
Actually,
Yeah, this is the crazy freeway. Yeah, I remember now.
Yes, it's really not pleasant to see it happen. They've literally just like dug through the mountain
Yeah.
with diggers and just laid road like it's scale electrics.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, I think it was 2008 or 2007. I was in China and we went down the Yangtze, and it was right when they were making the Three Gorges Dam, and there was these big billboards with a big red line, and I think it was like 125 meter, and it was basically telling everybody you need to get above this line within X number of years or else you won't be there. And so there was just streams of people like ants who were moving, thousands of years old archaeological sites that were just streaming brick by brick, trying to recreate everything above the line.
Crazy.
Yeah, China does construction differently than the rest of the world. Yeah, so what I would try to do is try and think about, what would a water body, let's say we have a contour that's halfway down here, what does a water body look like here? And then if we ran that swale for collection all the way over, and then probably did our overflow on the ridge line or the ridge form, because this is more of a ridge form here versus a ridge line. So something like that then would give you the water, because I know you were talking about it's wet, and it's like any place, it's too wet and sometimes not wet enough in others. But that sizing of impoundment, if that's 30 meters, call that 1510, 150 by 1 by 2. Yeah, you'd be looking at a quarter million liters of water, and that would do whatever you needed to do in that setup over the year.
Cool. Yeah, because in the winter, well, running through the winter's very short, but the autumn and the spring is also very dry as well as the winter. So you get probably 3 months of very dry weather. No, hardly any rain at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
So, yeah.
No, it looks good. I would start thinking about water retention in that sort of form. And there may be a conversation about doing a lower pond as well, having a pond lower down, because generally from the road, you'll probably have facility area or housing or whatever close to, and then
Yeah.
Mostly when we're looking at steep areas, we want to revegetate, and then usually what we'll do is we'll revegetate natively our draws and our drainages just to support and strengthen the watershed there. Which will leave a very steep section, which will be hard to manage, although the Chinese are known for their incredible terraces. But at this level of change, that's super steep. I don't know if I would mess with that. So this might be left for full native vegetation, and then you've got this area for production in whatever way you see fit. But yeah, this could be largely self-contained from a water perspective, looking at it. If everything holds true in terms of the contours and the water situation you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going back up there tomorrow actually, so I'm going to have another look at the lay of the land and sort of double check
Yeah.
the rough kind of contours to what I've done. So yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah, looks great, man. I think you've done a great job. Looks like you're doing it in Photoshop and PowerPoint. So yeah, it's coming together
Yeah,
really nicely.
I did the most of it in Photoshop and then did some of it in PowerPoint on here.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I'll say this, and you don't have to go with what I'm saying, but I'm not a huge fan of different iconography for different plant species. It's an easier read if it's a two-letter abbreviated legend. So if you have one for, let's say, deciduous trees, one for coniferous trees,
Okay.
and they're all deciduous. And then you're just using something simple, and then it's very easy to read. This, at least for me, and I wasn't the kid who ever found Waldo, so take it with a grain of salt. But I find this difficult to go back and forth and be like, okay, so which one's the lemon? Maybe that one.
Yeah. It turns into a bit of a game.
Yeah, and you really want
Oh
the
no.
legibility
Yeah,
of your
okay.
map to be apparent, quick, and easy. You don't want anybody to struggle. It's
All right.
one of the things I find with students in this class. They tend to spend a lot of time changing colors and doing things in the background. It's like, just make it simple. Just make it as easy to read and simple as read as possible. Because if you do bring in somebody else to do anything, you might look at microhydro here, or you might bring in a builder or whatever. They're going to want to see a map of one way, shape, or form. And convention is really just simple lines with simple abbreviated legends. So yeah, I don't
Okay.
want to make more work for you, but if it were I would make it simpler.
So essentially, you could just list them all as fruit trees, and then the pines separately, and
Yeah, exactly. So similar to
and
what
the ash separately.
similar to what the examples here are showing. So you've got conifer and deciduous, and then you just have a very
Oh
simple,
yeah.
and
Okay.
it's easier to read, right? You can still show size, which is great,
Yeah.
canopy
Yeah.
diameter, but it's a lot easier to read, I find.
Right.
Doing
Yeah.
it that way than having those iconographies. So, but there was
Okay.
a bit of a push from the powers that be to include other icons. So I have included them kind of against the, but in all the
Okay.
tutorials and of course in the actual map, I have these. So it's, anyways,
Understood. Yeah.
you don't need to know about that, but I'm telling you anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would make it easy, man. I'd make it easy on you and easy on anybody else. I would just use, I would use one for conifer, use one for deciduous, and then just do a very simple uh, two letter, usually working with the Latin name as the two letter, and then just
Oh, okay. Yeah.
the entire thing.
Would you list the? Would you list the? Oh no, you wouldn't. Of course. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I
And
can
nice
get
to
that
see
done.
like a very simple way of looking at the eucalyptus and then the conifer forest. Very easy. So
Yeah.
that's an easy read, and you look at it and you go, okay, great, I get it. But yeah, great work. Looks good. So I would add in this adapted scale, and then yeah, I think you're off to the races.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. The only thing I would say as I look at this here is, and I say this to everybody, is really be conscientious about the gutter space around the sides. So when you're
Yeah, I
presenting,
saw that. I saw that in your last lesson. Yeah, was
Yeah, so
thinking.
when you're presenting or when you're printing, you can really cut off information, and this is fine because this information is not totally necessary to read. But basically, I keep the nameplate in the background, and this is my left boundary, and I keep this as my right boundary. And you've basically done it. I would just say be conscientious not to go any further.
Yeah. Okay.
But great job. Yeah, really nicely done.
Thanks for
Kevin,
your help.
Yeah, you're
could
welcome.
you talk again? You said that the dam making a pond that was like too deep as it is wide or something?
Yeah, so this was a Jeff Lawton-ism when I took a earthworks course with him years ago at the Amma the Hugging Saint uh, farm down in California, probably a decade ago now. And he made a really good point, which I then adopted and in practice has turned out to be true. So basically, if the dam wall, or let's use a color that actually is contrasting. Sorry, I'm just gonna check this out. Sorry, Leon, I'm gonna mute you there, mate. So if the dam wall, and I'm gonna make this, how does this show up? That's pretty good. Let's see if the yellow, is that a better? Yeah, that's better. Okay, great. So basically, if the distance of the dam wall is 1 or 2 times the depth or the width, you know, it's all malleable when you're working in space and time. But if it's basically too deep in terms of how deep the pond is, we usually think that that's an economical pond to create because of the amount of earth you have to move to create the keyway, and the dam, and then the dam height. So that way there's enough freeboard, which is the space above standing water height where there's no water on the dam wall because we don't want to get a wave action that then takes away the dam wall. We usually say that's an economical dam. So basically, if this distance is 1-2 deep, so if it's D2, then we would say that's an economical dam as just a rule of thumb, quick heuristic.
Okay.
Yeah. So
thank you.
if we drew that basically, so if that was our conversation, and this would be the contour that the dam would be on, and that would be the dam wall, we would say that'd probably be like right on the edge of being economical. That said, when you get into places like China, depending on if you can access at that steepness, you're probably going to be going with an excavator. Yeah, once you move into developing nations and areas within those nations that are developing, because China is very much like that. There's some places that are more modern than you could imagine, and there's other places that are definitely still within that antiquated idea of developing. You may find that it's just incredibly inexpensive. It's the same thing for us in Ecuador. The machine time is ridiculously inexpensive to the point to where, you know, if people weren't so protective of their machines, you could just buy the time and do it yourself and then learn something on the way.
Yeah, I've got a spot that is, I think it's going to be very economical then because it's very long. It's a very long kind of trough
Oh, okay.
that I'm looking at. So
Let's bring it
that's
back
good
up.
to hear.
Yeah, I love nothing more than planning water bodies. Nothing more in the world. Or at least in this design work. Well, maybe values-based decision making. Okay, let's bring it back up here.
So it'll be the page 30 or 31 there, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, so right at the
Oh, is this
top,
what we're
right
talking
there.
about
Yeah,
here?
yeah, right there.
Oh, that's sexy. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah.
And it's actually, it goes back even further. The front, you can see there's some tree density there.
Yeah.
So I might not log that out. There's like 20 trees there.
Yeah.
But the trough goes back quite a ways.
Yeah. Have you been able to export your contours as KMZs?
Yes. Yeah, I did save them. I think it was KML or KMZ.
Yeah. Yeah. You may want to play around with that. Although you already have QGIS, so you don't, if you become more familiar with KMZ or with QGIS, then you can work there. But I would probably import that into Google Earth Pro and then play around with the water body sizes and the swale size and all the rest of that. But That's a good looking place, especially because you can wrap around. The fence will be, you'll have to take it out and put it back in, but you can basically turn this entire area into your water catchment because you could wrap
Yeah.
around, depending on the earth, if it's as so much in the Okanagan is, it can be very rocky. But that's a great spot, especially above the potential
Yeah.
primary agricultural zone. And these are a meter. Is that what these are?
Yeah, 1 meter.
Okay, so you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6, 3. Yeah, not a huge amount of PSI, but with a little booster, you could take it anywhere on the property.
Yeah, it flows. That gray rectangle there in the top middle is actually a cistern house that we just activated
Oh, okay.
with for domestic water. So
Okay.
yeah, and it gets like 22 PSI or something down to the house.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah, that's really nice. That's a real nice thing to have on site there. And then this is, of course, a name creek, so you're not going to be able to touch it.
Yeah.
But still you can play with that riparian area for sure. And the nice thing is if you did get yourself into basket work, willow work, alder work, red osier, dogwood, you would then have your supply for years to come.
Yeah.
Looks great.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome, sir. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else want to chime in or want some attention on your base map or questions about your base map? Yeah, go ahead. Or is this our short base map clinic? That's okay too. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure having everybody here. Thanks for the questions from Leon and Ruben. That was great. If anybody has any other questions, I'll be back on Friday and we'll be doing this one more time before the assignments due on Monday.
Awesome. Thank you, John.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you, Javin.
Welcome.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.